I want you to try a little visualization exercise with me. Picture yourself in 1995.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, you're sitting at a desk that probably has this giant CRT monitor on it, the kind that's as deep as it is wide and weighs like 40
Oh,
pounds.
yeah, it takes up the whole desk.
Exactly. And you want to check your email. But you don't just tap a piece of glass. You have to sit down, press a physical power button, hear the fan whir to life, and just wait for the hard drive to make that heavy crunching sound.
Right. And then comes the real performance, right? The dial-up handshake.
The song of my people.
It really was.
That screeching, static-filled noise that sounded like two fax machines just screaming at each other. And you had to sit there and listen to it, praying that nobody in the kitchen picked up the landline phone.
Because if they did,
Snap. Your connection to the outside world is just instantly gone.
it feels like the Stone Age now, doesn't it? But we have to remember, for a lot of people, this is well within living memory. This was the threshold you had to cross just to see a basic text-based web page.
It really was. And today, we aren't just reminiscing about slow internet. We are taking a deep dive into the absolute Wild West of that era.
We really are.
We're looking specifically at the origins of a company called Esoterica, which was the very first private internet service provider, or ISP, in Portugal.
And this is such a fascinating case study because we actually have the personal accounts of Paulo Laureano.
Right.
He was one of the early employees there, a really key technical figure. And the picture he paints of the mid-90s web is just, it's chaotic.
Chaotic is putting it mildly, honestly.
Hmm.
Based on the source material, this sounds more like an adventure novel than a tech startup story.
Yeah, completely.
We've got this massive David versus Goliath battle against a huge monopoly. We've got customer support calls involving literal witchcraft, which we will absolutely get to, and a midnight heist that nearly wiped the whole company off the map.
It covers the full spectrum of human experience, but the word Paulo uses to describe the whole endeavor is inconscience.
Inconscience, like unconsciousness or recklessness.
A bit of both, I think. He means you had to be somewhat recklessly brave, or maybe just naively optimistic, to even attempt building an ISP in Portugal at that time. You had to be unconscious of the massive risks, or you never would have started in the first place.
So let's set the stage for this. It's the mid-90s. The internet is barely a concept for most people. What does the landscape even look like for a couple of friends trying to start an internet company?
Well, imagine trying to open a lemonade stand, but the only person who sells lemons and the person who owns the sidewalk and the person who controls the water supply is a giant corporation that actively hates lemonade stands.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
That was the reality. Esoterica was a private startup founded by friends, but they were stepping into a ring occupied by an absolute heavyweight giant, which was Portugal Telecom, or PT.
And PT wasn't just a competitor, right? They were the actual infrastructure.
Precisely. And this is the crucial context here. Esoterica sold you the access, the login, the email address, the server space. But to actually connect to Esoterica's servers, the customer had to use the physical phone lines. And who owned those phone lines?
Portugal Telecom.
Right. And back in the 90s, local calls weren't free. You paid by the minute.
Oh, I remember this. You'd get yelled at for being online too long because the phone bill at the end of the month would be astronomical.
Exactly. And this created what Paulo Laureano describes as a perverse business model. There was this really unique friction there that just doesn't exist today. Think about the incentives. Esoterica obviously wants you to have a good, fast experience.
Right.
But Portugal Telecom charges you by the minute.
Wait, I see where this is going. If Esoterica's service was slow, like if the connection lagged and it took you 10 minutes to download a single low-res image,
The customer stays on the line longer.
and Portugal Telecom makes more money.
Correct. The infrastructure provider had a direct financial incentive for the internet service to be incredibly inefficient. It was a complete paradox. Paulo points out that if the service was blazing fast, PT made pennies. If it was a clogged mess, they made a fortune.
That is just maddening. You're trying to build a high-speed ramp to the future, but the guy who owns the road actively wants a traffic jam.
And that's exactly where that inconscience comes in. They were fighting a battle where the battlefield itself was literally rigged against them. And it wasn't just the business side that was hard, the technology itself. I mean, we take for granted how easy it is to spin up a server today.
Yeah, today you just go to AWS or Azure, you click a button, and 5 seconds later you have a server running in a data center in Virginia.
In 1995, the tech stack was a physical nightmare. Paolo describes the process of just getting the operating system running on their servers. They were using Red Hat Linux.
Which is a very standard enterprise system now, very polished.
Back then, it was incredibly raw. And you didn't download it from the cloud. You installed it from floppy disks.
I read this part in the account, and I actually laughed out loud. 18 floppy disks.
18.
For those of you listening who might be too young to remember, a floppy disk held 1.44 megabytes of data. It was slow, it made this awful grinding noise, and it was so fragile.
So imagine the process. You put in disk 1, grind, 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 wait 10 minutes, eject, put in disk 2, grind, grind, grind. You do this for hours. And here's the kicker. If you get to disk 17 and there's a read error, which happened all the time.
Oh, no. Don't tell me you have to start over.
You start over from disk 1.
No way.
Yeah, Paulo said it could take a full day just to get the base operating system installed on a single machine. It was a test of patience and physical endurance.
And once it's actually installed, it's not like you have a mouse and windows to click on.
Oh, absolutely not. No graphical user interface at all. 99.9% of the work was done via the command line, just glowing text on a black screen.
And remember, there is no Google to search for error codes. There is no Stack Overflow to just copy-paste a solution from.
Right. If something broke, you had exactly two options. You could read the physical manual, or you could read the raw source code itself. You had to actually understand the C programming language just to fix the email server.
Which brings us to a specific detail Paolo mentions that I absolutely loved.
Huh?
The Bat Book.
Ah, yes. The legendary O'Reilly book on SendMail.
For people who don't know, O'Reilly is a technical publisher that puts these detailed woodcut drawings of animals on their covers. This specific book, which was basically the Bible for email administrators, had a bat on the cover.
And it was very fitting because navigating SendMail was literally like flying blind in a cave. It was notoriously difficult software. Paulo mentions that he studied this book until he could write the configuration rules entirely by hand.
He actually described the code as looking like cats had danced on the keyboard.
It's such an apt description. SendMail configuration rules are these dense, messy strings of special characters, $signs, asterisks, brackets, exclamation points. It looks like swearing in a comic book. One wrong character and email just stops working for the entire company.
And he had to memorize that.
He had to be completely fluent in it. That was the do-it-yourself ethos of the era. They weren't just assembling pre-made parts, they were machining the raw parts themselves. Paula says he learned 10 years worth of skills in that single year at Esoterica because he simply had no other choice.
So you have the engineers in the back room battling Linux kernels and memorizing gibberish code from a book with a bat on it. But then you have the other side of the business. The people answering the phones.
The customer support team. And this is really where the story shifts from a technical drama to a complete comedy of errors.
We really have to talk about the user error era. Because we aren't just talking about people forgetting their passwords. We are talking about people who didn't even know what a password was.
We do have to be a little empathetic here, but yes, 99% of the population had never even heard of the internet. They didn't have a mental model for a network. They thought computers were just really fancy typewriters.
Paulo shares some absolute gems about this confusion. The first one is a major branding issue. The company was named Esoterica,
which in Portuguese and English really implies esoteric knowledge. Mysticism, occultism, hidden secrets.
So naturally, the tech support line rings.
And it's not someone asking why their modem isn't dialing. It's someone asking for the price of black candles, or a cape, or a witchcraft starter kit.
Can you imagine? You're a stressed sysadmin, knee-deep in server code. You pick up the ringing phone, and you have to politely explain, "No, ma'am, we don't sell hexes. We sell email access."
And it happened constantly. But beyond the name, the real confusion was about what the internet actually did. There's a story Paulo tells about the internet scam clock that I think is just profound.
Break this down for us, because this involves a piece of software called Trumpet Windsock.
Right. So before Windows had internet networking built in, you needed this third-party program, Trumpet Windsock, to dial the modem. When it successfully connected, it displayed a little timer on the screen just showing how long you'd been online.
Just a simple duration counter, 00010002.
Simple to us. But a customer called Paulo, absolutely furious, screaming that Esoterica was a total scam. Why? Because the timer on his screen didn't match the time on his wall clock.
He thought the duration timer was the actual time of day.
He did. He argued that since the internet is a global network, it should obviously know what time it is. But the real insight, and this is the part that just blows my mind, is why he was watching the clock so closely in the first place.
Why?
He told Paulo he had been staring at the screen all night, waiting for the emission to start.
The emission? Like a broadcast?
Exactly. He thought the internet was like television. You tune in, and then the content just comes to you. He connected, saw the blank screen or a clock, and sat there waiting for the internet show to begin. When nothing happened, he assumed the clock was wrong and the whole thing was a fraud.
That is just wow. I mean, it's funny, but it really shows the massive paradigm shift taking place. He was a passive consumer waiting to be entertained. He didn't realize the internet is active. You have to go out and find the content.
It was a complete rewiring of how we consume information. We moved from sit back and watch to lean forward and click. That just wasn't intuitive to someone who grew up entirely with TV and radio.
And then you have the hardware confusion. The classic story involving Mario Valente, the co-founder.
Yeah.
The floppy fax.
Oh, a classic. A client called wanting to send a file to the office. Mario explains email, FTP, all the digital ways to do it. The client just doesn't get it. Finally, the client asks, in all seriousness, can I just put the floppy disk into the fax machine and fax it to you?
I'm just picturing the sound of a hard plastic disc being violently crunched through a fax roll.
It really shows just how abstract digital data was back then. For that user, the data was the physical disk. They couldn't separate the invisible information from the plastic square it lived on.
There were also people buying the internet kit, which actually came in a physical box and complaining it didn't work, only for the team to discover they didn't even own a computer.
They thought the box was the internet. Like buying a radio, you buy the box, you turn it on, you have internet. The idea that it was just software to drive a piece of hardware they didn't have it just didn't compute for them at all.
There is one anecdote, though, that isn't really funny. It's actually quite sad. But I think it speaks to the deep human need for connection that drove the web even back then.
You're talking about the agoraphobic woman.
Yeah. Tell us about her.
Paulo mentions this woman who suffered from severe agoraphobia. She literally couldn't leave her house, and she called the tech support line every single day.
Did she have actual technical problems?
No, she would invent fake issues. My modem is making a funny noise, or I can't find the specific menu. She did it just to hear another human voice.
Man, that hits you in the gut a little.
It really does. It reminds us that even back then, amidst all the technical chaos and the witchcraft calls, the core promise of the internet was always connection. For her, the connection wasn't digital data. It was the actual voice of the tech support agent on the other end of the line.
It's a really powerful reminder of the human side of all this tech. But speaking of drama, we have to get to the main event. We've had comedy, we've had tragedy, now we have the thriller.
The night the internet disappeared.
Set the scene for us. It's 2 a.m. Paulo is the sysadmin on duty, but he's at home, sleeping.
Right. They had this paging system. If a server went down, his pager would beep. At 2 a.m., the pager goes off. The news server is down.
Which, Usenet News at 2 a.m., it's not exactly mission critical. He probably rolls over and thinks, I'll just fix it in the morning.
Exactly his thought. He's tired. He goes back to sleep. But then, a few minutes later, beep, the web server is down. Then beep, the mail server is down. Then the DNS.
That's the heartbeat right there. If DNS is down, you don't exist.
It's a total blackout. The entire infrastructure of the company has vanished from the network in the span of 10 minutes. This isn't a glitch. This is a catastrophe.
So now the adrenaline kicks in. Paulo jumps in his car. He lives near the data center, which was located in an office complex in a place called Benfica.
He drives over there in the middle of the night, heart pounding. He runs into the building, up to the server room. He expects to see a power outage, maybe a blown fuse box, smoke, maybe.
And what does he see?
He pushes open the door, and the room is empty.
Empty.
Gone. The racks are completely stripped. Cables are dangling from the ceiling, scattered on the floor like spaghetti. Dust motes just dancing in the air. The servers, the physical machines that were esoterica are gone.
My stomach would have completely dropped through the floor.
Paulo says he felt exactly that. He had this irrational, desperate thought. Did the team move the office and forget to tell me? Because the alternative was just too terrifying to process.
So he calls Mario Valente the boss.
And this is where Mario's leadership style really shines. Paulo is panicking. He's describing the scene. Mario listens, asks for the timestamps of the pager alerts, and then he realizes something chilling.
The timeline.
The servers went down only minutes before Paulo arrived. The thieves had to physically move heavy hardware. These weren't little laptops, they were heavy towers.
So they are still in the building.
Mario tells Paulo, get out of the room. lock the door, wait outside the building immediately.
Talk about a tense moment. You're standing outside a dark office building in Benfica, knowing that the people who just dismantled your entire livelihood are somewhere inside, maybe even watching you.
And for Paulo, it wasn't just the physical fear of the thieves. It was an existential fear for the entire company. He thought, this is it. It's over. In the 90s, you didn't have cloud backups. You didn't have easy snapshots. If those hard drives were gone, the data was gone forever. If the data is gone, the ISP is dead.
So Mario arrives. The police arrive. What happens?
Mario was right. He had what Paulo calls cold blood, just absolute calm in a crisis. He deduced that the thieves would get lost in the maze of corridors in that complex. The police searched the building. They found them inside the complex. They had loaded all the servers into a van, but they couldn't find the exit or had gotten trapped in the labyrinth of the parking lot.
Caught red-handed with the internet in the back of a van.
Literally. They recovered the hardware, but the night definitely wasn't over.
Right, because you can't just plug a server back in after it's been ripped out of the wall by panicking thieves.
Paulo used the phrase a papo seco. They were yanked out dry. No proper shutdown procedure, just cables ripped. The file systems were totally corrupted. The hardware was banged up.
So the heist turns into this frantic repair job.
They spent the entire night, right up until 9 a.m., physically rebuilding the data center, running file system checks on every single disk, praying the data was readable, recrimping network cables.
And they actually made it.
By the time the regular business day started, Esoterica was back online. The customers probably never even knew that for a few hours in the middle of the night, their entire ISP had been stolen and recovered.
That is an incredible story. It really drives home the sheer physicality of the internet back then. We talk about the cloud today like it's this magic mist. But in the end, it's boxes in a room that can literally be stolen by guys in a van.
It's a crucial takeaway. The internet is physical, it's electricity, metal, and plastic. We've just gotten very, very good at hiding that complexity. But for Paulo and Mario, the complexity was right there in their hands.
I do want to touch on that dynamic between Paulo and Mario Valente before we close out, because every great startup story seems to have this visionary tyrant figure.
And Mario absolutely fits that mold. Paulo explicitly compares him to the Steve Jobs of that era.
Which is high praise, but also kind of a warning.
Right. He was brilliant, visionary, but very difficult. Paulo says the office environment was often high stress. People were sometimes afraid to even knock on Mario's door, but Paulo also deeply acknowledges why that was.
Mario was the one dealing with the nightmare side of the business.
Exactly. Mario was fighting the massive legal battles with Portugal Telecom. He was handling the billing, the cash flow, the threats. He was the shield for everyone else.
And because he was the shield, the engineers could be the wizards in the back.
That's exactly how Paulo sees it. He says that because Mario absorbed all that toxicity and stress, the technical team was free to do what he called the delicious work. They got to play with the tech, solve the big puzzles, and essentially build the future.
It's a major trade-off. You get to learn 10 years of skills in one single year, but you have to do it in an absolute pressure cooker.
And that pressure cooker forged an entire generation of tech experts in Portugal. Esoterica wasn't just a company, it was a school for them.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from installing Linux with 18 floppy disks, to fielding support calls about witchcraft, to catching thieves with a van full of servers. When you look at all this source material, what's the big picture for you?
For me, it's a powerful reminder that the internet didn't just appear out of nowhere. It wasn't inevitable. It was built. It was built by people like Paulo and Mario who were willing to be unconscious, to take completely unreasonable risks, to patiently explain to a guy that the internet isn't a TV show.
It really makes you appreciate the seamlessness we have today. When I open a browser now, I'm standing on the shoulders of guys who had to literally read the bat book to figure out how to send an email.
Absolutely. We carry that legacy in our pockets every single day.
I want to leave you with a thought today. We laughed at the guy staring at his clock, waiting for the internet emission to start. He was trying to understand a totally new world, using the rules of the old world.
It's a mistake we all make when things change.
But ask yourself, are we doing that right now? With AI? With quantum computing? With whatever is coming next? If you had to explain how a large language model works to someone from 1995 without using today's buzzwords, could you do it? Or are we just staring at the screen waiting for the magic to happen, not realizing we're supposed to be driving?
That is a very humbling thought. We might just be the confused users of the next generation.
Thanks for diving deep with us today into the wild origins of the Portuguese web. A huge shout out to the source material from Paolo Loriano for these incredible stories. We'll see you on the next deep dive.